Welcome to another episode of the Third Apron podcast. I very nearly said Who Says No. We're going to be doing some Who Says No today. So that's why I was thinking that. And it's my old podcast. So fun little blast from the past. I am one of your hosts, Sam Quinn. Joining me, as always, the Third Apron founder, CEO. I don't know what your official title is. Yossi, do you have a title?
Fast, just founder of Third Apron. And if this thing
We can do better than that.
Well, let's see. Let's expand this thing first. Make it the big multi-million dollar empire we're projecting it, and then we can have different titles.
You should at least go with governor for this is going to be a basketball podcast, or maybe president of basketball ops. Like, just give yourself a little bit more grandeur than that. I'm a little disappointed in the lack of creativity, but this is going to be a good episode to be. This is going to be. This is going to be a good episode to flex your creativity, because what we're doing today is, over the last, really all season, we kind of have had these moments where we've joked about, like, oh, can we find an Embiid trade? Can we find a Kawhi trade? Can we find, like, can we trade these untradeable contracts? And this has been coming up often enough, both on air and on our text, that we just decided to do an episode where we would figure out if we could trade the untradeable contracts. We are going to go through what we think are some of the worst contracts in the NBA. We're going to do a separate episode at some point detailing the best and worst contracts, just like really digging in and going through it. But these are the high profile ones. And we're going to try to find some trades for the worst of the worst. So, Yossi, I'll let you go first. I can't even remember which players I assigned you. So just pick one you want to do, roll with it, and we're going to play some Who Says No.
So essentially, this is kind of, in a way, has some overlaps with who we think are the worst contracts in the league. This isn't the definitive ranking. Eventually, me and Sam will do an episode where we're talking about best contracts and worst contracts. It'll probably be like a way bigger pool, go through different tiers of each one. So I've got 3 players. Sam's got 3 players. The first one I want to do, and I guess I'm going to be working my way up from least exciting to the most interesting / unhinged trade I can possibly think of. So the first one I have is Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine, on the 4th year of that 5-year max contract he signed with the Bulls, he's making $48 million this year, and he's got a player option for that same amount next year. Or maybe it's a little less, I don't know, but it's in that high $40 million range. LaVine, kind of like the poster child of that crazy 2021 to 2023 time when guys that were like a top 30 player once, or for a very short amount of time, getting auto maxes, teams also just throwing away draft picks for a player in that range as well. Just a crazy time I think we're going to look back on. So the Kings right now, they are, as I check Tankathon, currently 4th on Tankathon. They have the 4th worst record in the league, tied with the Clippers. Wow, I haven't checked Tankathon all week, and I didn't even realize that. I know the Clippers went 2-1, 1-2 over the past 3 games, but I didn't know they're like tied for 3rd with the Kings and Pacers right now. So the Kings right now, they're probably where they want to be as far as the reverse standings go. But when you look at their financial situation, it's not good at all. One of the things that I've been talking about from time to time is about how the Kings, they just have no flexibility heading into next year with that Zach LaVine player option at $49 million, Sabonis making a near max contract, DeMar, Keegan Murray, Malik Monk, Schroeder, a high draft pick, which I'll update soon, all making a lot of money. The thing that I always keep pounding on is I think the best thing the Kings will get for most of their players is cap flexibility. Is there a sensible trade out there where they can get off some of these contracts, or even just one big one like Zach LaVine, and get a bunch of tax flexibility so they can be well under the tax for next year? Maybe, depending on their moves, they can be a cap space team because they need to take on bad money later, get some draft picks. So here is the trade that I came up with, Sam. It is a 2-team trade with the Washington Wizards. I sent Zach LaVine to the Washington Wizards along with the 2031 Wolves unprotected first, which seems like a lot, but bear with me. And then the Wizards will be sending back CJ McCollum, large expiring contract, Malachi Branham, Cam Whitmore, so some flyers there. And the Wizards would then throw the Kings a bone, send them uh, the 2026 first round pick. That's going to be 30th overall. It's the Thunder's first this year. And in exchange, the Kings will just send back like the least favorable of, they have like 2 or 3 second rounders in 2026. So the Wizards move down in the second round. But the Kings getting off $48 million for next year, they quote unquote break even on first round picks, even though they're trading, in both our opinions, a pretty really valuable first round pick. I was trying to think if there's maybe if there's another pick swap that could make it a little more equitable. But like, I'll just throw it to you. Who says no in that one?
I could see the Kings doing this. The Wizards, it's a home run. The Kings, like the fact that they're getting that Oklahoma City pick, which will be number 30, it's the sort of thing they would put on the press release where it's like, oh, we traded 1 first round pick and received 1 first round pick. And that's not really what happened, but it's the sort of thing that I think could justify it in their kind of deluded minds. I think you'd probably have to have an idea of what you were doing with that financial flexibility if you were like paying that much to get off of Zach LaVine. Like, because what you pointed out was you wanted to then create cap space and take on draft picks. Well, you've already lost a lot of draft value by going from the 31 Wizards pick or the 31 Wolves pick to the number 30 pick this year. So I don't quite know how you plan to break even on that exchange. So I think you'd have to have a really clear and coherent plan for how to make that worthwhile, like from a few subsequent moves standpoint. The thing that I'm kind of looking at is the Wizards probably think they're going to be good in 2031. That's 5 years out. And the Kings already owe swap rights with San Antonio from that horrible Harrison Barnes, like take on the contract in the DeMar DeRozan sign and trade situation. Could the Wizards add swap rights in 2031 to whichever pick that the Kings get?
You don't have to look at that, but I don't see why not. The other thing that I wanted to ask you is if I was feeling maybe the Kings are giving up a little bit too much value. So I'm trying to see from the Wizards.
They are. That's why I'm adding the swap.
So that's one thing. I was also thinking, what if they sent back that Warriors 2030 first round pick that they're owed, which is top 20 protected from the Jordan Poole trade? That's probably there's a very good chance that just becomes 1 second round pick. But if the Warriors happen to be really good that year, then it'll be something in the 20s. Does that kind of help with it a little bit? Because it's kind of similar than in kind of like the De'Aaron Fox trade where they got a bunch of firsts on paper, but they really only got like 2, and like one of them was like pretty good.
That pick is definitely fake. Like, just even if you get it, it's low value. What I'd probably do if I had that pick, just regardless of all of this, is go to the Warriors and say, like, hey, can you give us 3 seconds and we can just like get rid of this 2030 pick? It's not doing us any favors and it's complicating your Stepien situation for whatever else you want to do. So I would be going to the Warriors regardless and trying to get second rounders for that. That's not especially enticing to me for the Kings. I think for the Kings to do this, I want 2031 swap rights. Because then at least, if you're Sacramento and you're thinking, we're going to be, well, we don't know if we're going to be bad. That's 5 years out. But we know the Spurs are going to be good, right? Like, we traded away swap rights with the team that, like, might have the best player in the NBA in 2031. So we would like to not get back the 30th pick. The Wizards, I don't know what they're going to be in 2031. I think they'll be pretty good, but I can't really say that with any certainty. At least then, if you're the Kings, and the nightmare scenario where you give up a really good pick to the Spurs pans out, maybe then you're swapping from the top of the lottery to number 15 as opposed to number 30. I would never do this. I want to be absolutely clear. There's no world in which I'd give up that Minnesota pick. It is super valuable to me. But if we're being realistic, I think the Kings might consider it if you gave them those swaps in addition to number 30, and they could get off LaVine. Like, I think that opens up some interesting possibilities. Like, are you just thinking we're trying to become a cap space team and take on picks?
I think that's their what main path forward. So this is an extra pick that the Kings have lying ground. But no, I think you're right. If there's some way they can do, and maybe so the Wizards don't have any extra picks that year in 2031. They do have that extra 2029. That's either going to be from Boston, Milwaukee. So maybe there's something there. The Wizards will receive the second most favorable of those three. Between
So it's Milwaukee, Boston, Portland, right?
in 2029.
That's
I
like
think
a pretty interesting pick. Because remember, the Bucks are going to be bad in 29, which really means you're getting the most favorable of Boston and Portland. And I'm willing to believe that one of those teams is going to be like a play-in team or worse. So yeah, that's another interesting way to do this. Like, I think the basic structure that you built is something I could see the Kings talking themselves into. I just think it's not quite enough value because that Minnesota pick is like, is that the single most valuable asset that Sacramento owns? Would you rather have that pick or Domantas Sabonis?
I'd rather have that pick, probably.
I would too.
Yeah.
So I'd rather have Sacramento's own picks, to be clear. But that Minnesota pick is the most valuable external asset they have.
Yeah, if the Wizards had an extra pick in 2031, maybe there's a swap that could work. That's so hard.
Well, they just swap on their own.
Like, who do you? It's really hard to project. I don't know. I want to say in 2031, the Wizards and Wolves should be pretty equal, but no, I just realized, the Kings, so they have two firsts, their own in 2031. So maybe it's just the least favorable. I mean, both can be pretty bad. I don't know. I think there's something there. You're right. I think we just gotta like fine tune the details. I think there's something there. But yeah, on its own, I think it is just like a little too much. But the Wizards do have they have a lot of second round picks. I think they have like over 14. So yeah, you can kind of equalize it by them sending back like 4 or 5. The Sixers traded a crappy first, which is going to be that Thunder first last year, to get like 4 or 5 second round picks. But yeah, that's the Zach LaVine trade I came up with for the Wizards. They have a bunch of cap space next year. If they can get a very valuable first for taking on $50 million next year, yeah, I think that's exactly what they're trying to do with their cap space. All right, so let's move on. Who do you want to talk about?
Well, you started at the most hinged part of your list, so I'm going to go the other way, and I'm just going to immediately drop my banger. Finding a Kawhi Leonard trade, there's so few teams that it might make sense for. The contract is a mess. You have to worry about the investigation. He obviously barely plays. You're looking for a team that has a lot of expiring easy money to trade that probably isn't championship caliber now, but could be with the everything goes right Kawhi scenario. And Kawhi would be interested in playing for some reason or another. There is one team that checks all those boxes. It's not realistic, but the more I think about it, the more I talk myself into this. I think the Lakers should trade for Kawhi Leonard. Here's the trade. The Lakers would get Kawhi. The Nets would take on the expiring contract of Maxi Kleba, and they would get Dalton Knecht and a 2032 Lakers second round pick for helping them out there. The Clippers would take on Jared Vanderbilt's long-term money, so you are getting some bad money there, but you're also getting the expiring contracts of Rui Hachimura and Gabe Vincent, and you're getting a 2030 first-round swap from the Lakers. If you're the Clippers, I don't know that you're doing better than shedding $40 million in money by trading Kawhi. Having Kawhi is doing you no good. You could go into next year as the cap space king, totally own this offseason. Maybe you try to swipe Austin Reeves. I don't think he's leaving the Lakers, but maybe you try. Maybe there's somebody else you want to get. Maybe I've thrown out Trae Young a lot. Maybe you sign Trae Young, but then you also sign some supporting pieces and do what you did in the summer of 2024, where they signed Derrick Jones Jr. and they signed a bunch of role players. You do a version of that. I don't know what it would be, but the basic idea is that you are clearing your books and you are washing your hands of Kawhi Leonard in a year where this season is lost anyway. The Thunder would wind up the winners of this trade because that would make the Clipper pick even more valuable. But if you're the Lakers, you are effectively here not touching your core at all, except for Rui Hachimura. You are turning Rui Hachimura into Kawhi Leonard, and otherwise the playoff rotation you've built is basically the same. You'd have 7.6 million in apron space left. You'd have to sign 4 players. I assume Nick Smith Jr. would be one of them, been the standout on a two-way. And then you'd just be the buyout king after that. And maybe you'd find 1 or 2 depth pieces you could use, but you still obviously have the big 3. You have LeBron, you have Luka, you have Reeves. You still have your main bench guys. You have Smart, you have Laravia, Ayton's still there. Like, you have the core of your team. You're just turning Rui Hachimura into Kawhi Leonard. If Kawhi gets hurt, well, you weren't winning the title this year anyway. At this rate, like, you get Kawhi. If he is Kawhi, you could win the title with him, and you wouldn't have given away any first round picks. You could trade 2031 and 2033 in the offseason. You could use Kawhi as an expiring at that point. Like, this makes them better in the short term. It doesn't really close any long-term doors except for 2026 cap space. The only real issue I see with giving up 2026 cap space is that it makes it harder to re-sign DeAndre Ayton. But I think if DeAndre Ayton wants to be a Laker long-term, you can just do a 1+1, get him to early bird rights, and then sign him in 2027. You could use 27 cap space. Like, there are ways around this. I just think this is the way that the Lakers can give themselves championship upside this season without giving up all of their draft capital or Austin Reeves. Yossi, who says no?
Do you want to guess who I think says no?
The Clippers, because it's just a PR nightmare. But who's in basketball terms? I actually do think I know who you're going to say says no. Let me guess.
So Brooklyn
the Nets
for
are going to
sure
say no, according to you.
No. Brooklyn for sure says yes. I'm going in
really?
order.
Okay.
Yeah. They get a 31 first for taking on mostly.
Oh, no, they don't. No, stop.
I messed it up.
Yeah, they get Connect
Kleba.
And they get a 2032 second with Kleba.
Oh, 2032 second.
Yes, but they also get Connect. So you're getting a second round pick and Connect to take on Kleba.
Wait a minute. Did the Lakers trade a 31 first at all?
No, they traded a 2030 swap right with the Clippers.
Okay, so I misheard that. Okay, so yeah, Brooklyn probably still says yes. I think you're right about the Clippers, where they probably don't get that much better than this. Like, they can wait around to see if they get something better. I'm sure there's something better. It'd be like 1 or 2% better. It's not going to be like, they're not going to get anything significantly better than this. The biggest thing they're getting is a lot more cap space for next year by getting off Kawhi's $50 million. All they're taking back is Vanderbilt's 12, 13 million, whatever it is. Now they're probably looking at something like 80 million in cap space. So if they want to try to go double maxes, they're in the vicinity. Then yeah, you're getting that swap. I think it sounds kind of crazy if I feel like the Lakers say no. I think they're the first team to say no, even though they're not giving up a first. Even though the buses are now gone, I feel like there could still be a little bit of Clippers saying no to this, or like even just both teams not wanting to work together because there has been some bad blood there. But even when you put that aside, all the Kawhi stuff also, like Clippers separately, they also, Kawhi and his side during the negotiations with the Lakers also, there's some bad blood there. And now everything's coming out that he always had special treatment and just a lot of things that's not good in the locker room and all that stuff. I don't know if the Lakers want that. I feel like they would probably prefer to keep their powder dry at this point. Instead of consolidating using that space, they can have like multiple players at the worst case. Like if they go into the off season, they don't get a star, they can sign a lot of pretty decent guys to like 1+1s. I think they would rather go that route and just have the depth. If they don't get a star, then just lock in the Kawhi for, what is it, the next 2 years, I believe he has left?
Yeah, it's this year and next year. So they'd still have their 27 cap space.
I think they would rather just hold on and just see. It sounds kind of crazy because they're getting Kawhi for free. I think that they'd rather just see what else is out there. I'm not sure I feel like they just wouldn't be interested in him anymore. Just as
do you think the Lakers could beat the Thunder if they made this trade? No, like if the Lakers are rolling out a starting 5 of Austin Reeves, Luka Doncic, LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, and DeAndre Ayton, and we'll say Kawhi Leonard is healthy, you still think the answer is no?
Yeah, the answer's definitely still no. I'm not totally convinced they beat Houston either.
Oof.
I'm sure we'll get more into it. I'm getting a lot higher on Houston. I'm sure we'll talk more about them as the season goes on. Uh,
I
but
think that's a margin of error trade for the Lakers. Like, I
but
don't
I,
think
what
they
I
would be
yeah,
favored over the Thunder, but I think it would be plausible that they could beat them.
but I'm as far as the value goes, I'm with you that this is probably what the Clippers are looking at. It just this him to the Lakers is just so hyper specific. Why I don't think he'd go there, or why the Lakers wouldn't want him. Either way, I just don't think Kawhi is tradable. Not because the league wouldn't allow it. I just can't imagine an interested team, is going to bring him in while this stuff's all ongoing. So maybe next year, especially once we get a little more clarity on his situation, a little closer to the end of his contract. He'll only have one more year. I think that type of trade is more realistic in the offseason.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
It's just there are so few teams that could say to themselves, "We are a Kawhi Leonard away from plausibly winning the championship." And even within that group, there are so few teams that have all of this expiring money that they could trade without like really hurting their team. The Lakers just check the most boxes, and Kawhi would obviously like to play for them if he can't play for the Clippers because he wants to live in LA. So like I know there's bad blood. I know it's horrible PR kind of for both sides, but mainly for the Clippers. It's not feasible. I think I'm going to be caping for this trade until the deadline. I think it makes a lot of sense for both teams.
All right, so let's move on to the next one. Here, wait, do you want to do snake draft or should I go next?
No, you go ahead.
All right. So my next guy is Zion Williamson. So in the past month or so, we have briefly talked about Zion as a potential trade candidate. I'm on I wouldn't call it a certainty, but I feel pretty good that Zion's probably not going to finish out this contract that he's on. He's got another 2 years left, making max level money, $40 million plus. I don't think there's really that many teams, very few teams out there that want to see him through this contract. He's not a max player. I think if a team trades for him, there's a very strong chance that they waive him. So they trade for him primarily for the savings, and then they waive him in the offseason once they can wipe off the money and just let him test the market. If someone's if they have, so hopefully you bring him back on something a little more, cost effective. So Sam asked me, can you find a team, trade him to a team that actually wants him and can potentially see out the contract? I worked really hard on this one, but the biggest development that changed over the past week that could maybe potentially add a team that might actually want Zion and let him finish out the contract is the Milwaukee Bucks, because the Milwaukee Bucks might have to trade Giannis. They don't have to trade him in this trade deadline, but that is now a possibility. Per Shams last week, Giannis is going to talk to the Bucks about his future. It's his second soft launch trade request this year. And now it's going to be more about Giannis opening up his teams, his preferences, because over the offseason, it was just Knicks or nothing. So I'm going to assume he opens up a couple more teams, one of which includes the Spurs, who I think if he opens up to them, that's going to be very likely the team that gets it done. So a 3-teamer. Let's see who I start with. So I guess I'll start with the Bucks. I'll start with the Spurs because they're going to be getting Giannis. So they are trading Keldon Johnson, Kelly Olynyk, Stephon Castle, Jeremy Sohan. So that's mostly to get the money to work. And then they're trading 3 first-round picks and 2 pick swaps. So the Bucks, they owe their picks in the odd numbered years. So to help recoup that, Spurs send them the 27 Hawks first, 29 Hawks first, 29 Spurs first, it's their own. And then also that 2030 first, Spurs first that has swapping rights with the Kings. And then on top of that, they have the right to defer it to 2032 if for whatever reason. That's not a good pick, but that is probably going to be the most valuable pick the Bucks get in this proposal I'm putting up. They also get swaps in 28 and 2030. I don't think the Spurs will need to go full draft like trade the extra first and the extra 2 swaps to make it happen. I feel like this would be enough on their end. So the Bucks, I will put up some cap sheets. Nope, wrong one. The Bucks, they now have they bring in Zion, they bring in Castle, they bring in Keldon Johnson. They'll need to waive 2 players or send 2 out, but this all fits in the tax. Even if they within the tax line, they can take back Zion and Stephon Castle and Keldon Johnson just for Giannis alone, and then they're getting all those picks that I mentioned. The Bucks, most likely in this scenario, are going to try to remain competitive. No better big man you could potentially. There's very few other big men you can pair Zion with. That's or would be a great fit, but pairing him with Miles Turner would be by far the best big man he can possibly be paired with in his career. Unless I'm missing somebody, I don't think so. So that is the Bucks end of it. I feel like this is kind of one of the better case scenarios as far as their return of what they can get. Spurs probably go a little bit into the tax, as you can see, to make this happen. But it's Giannis. You're going to have to spend a lot of money. Maybe there's a cap dump. They could, tax a little cap saving move they could do, deduct the tax. And then the Pelicans, what are they getting? They mostly are saving a bunch of money this year. They save I don't know, what is it, like $20-ish million by doing this year. So you get a very big trade exception. And then they're getting 3 second-round picks on top of that. And these second-round picks are basically picks that the Pelicans already owe the Spurs. Do you know what trade this is from?
Pelicans Spurs. Dejounte Murray stopped in Atlanta first, so it wasn't that one.
Nope. A Pelicans Spurs
Devontae
trade.
Graham?
Yes. In 2022, I believe the Pelicans traded like 4 or 5 second-round picks to the Spurs to get off Devontae Graham's money that they had. I don't know if they just signed him to, but he'd been there for a little bit. So here I have them getting back a 2020 second round pick. The Spurs have like 3 second-round picks in the 26 draft. So the second most favorable goes back to the Pelicans, and then they get their own 28 and 29 second-round picks back. I just don't think the Pelicans are really going to get like so much more better than this type of offer, like multiple seconds and a bunch of cap savings now, because they could also alternatively just waive Zion in the offseason and get the cap savings then. So you get you get a couple more picks now and extra savings now. So Sam, who says no?
I like this. Now, the obvious answer is the Bucks say no because we never trade Giannis, and he hasn't asked. So now, if we get to the point where Giannis has like genuinely asked for a trade and he's not doing the PR dance anymore, and he opens the list up beyond the Knicks, I would assume the Spurs would be reasonably high on that list. If that's what happens, I think you kind of have it. Like, this is pretty similar to the Giannis Spurs trade that I presented you with last week. You added a little bit more draft capital, but you took Devin Vassell out, which seems pretty reasonable to me. So the Spurs end of this works. The Pelicans, you're getting like actual value to do this. Like, Jeremy Sohan's a good player. Like, those second-round picks are nice. So good work for the Pelicans there to get off of a player they don't want to get good stuff back. And the Bucks are kind of the perfect team for Zion because they're built for a power forward to play point guard, essentially. That's what you want from Zion. You want Zion with a bunch of shooting. Do I think they would ever get a stop? No, but we have to be realistic about what post-Zion life is going to be for them, right? Like, they are just trying to stay competitive, develop Castle, see how those picks turn out. All things considered, that's a pretty interesting return from Milwaukee. At least if I were running these teams and we got to the point where a Giannis trade was happening, I'd say yes across the board.
I put some thought into this type of framework in the offseason. I don't have this exact framework in one of my videos, but I've had, like, if you look at my Pelicans video, you look at my Spurs video, which I had them trading for Giannis, there's some like overlap in these things. But I have thought long and hard about the possibility of, if the Bucks do finally trade Giannis, of the possibility of them taking back Zion. I don't know how much they value him, but it is one of those, getting him back for Giannis could be one of those things where, on top of the draft picks, on top of any young players they get, if they can try to at least spin it, but maybe internally they could view it as like a major positive addition. Now, at the same time, I haven't looked too into their cap situation for next year. Maybe they could also consider waiving him and bringing him back if they have cap space. They might have to do some more maneuvering to do that. I think even so in this situation, even though the Bucks can actually like really use Zion, I would say I think for any team trading for him, let him play the market and see if he can bring him back. Because for Zion, and again, like I'm not trying to advocate, he must get a pay cut. I'm just like cap strategy wise, it just doesn't make sense to have him finish out this contract. Um, if you for Zion though, if this happens to him, if he does get waived, he's probably going to want to go back to the team that waived him, because if he does like a 1+1, for example, he'd have full bird rights immediately if he opts out. So he preserves his bird rights a lot faster that way, gives himself a little more protection in case something happens.
I thought you lost your bird rights when you got waived.
Yeah, you lose your bird rights in the sense that, okay, let's say the Bucks trade for Zion and they waive him. They can only bring him back either with the minimum, their exception or cap space to pay him more than the minimum. So if they have enough cap space, they could pay him, I don't know, 25, 30 million. Let's say that's what the market is for him, which would make a lot more sense for Zion. Then the next season, once he finishes out the contract, if he does like a 1-year deal or a 1+1, he finishes out with the Bucks, he'd still have his bird rights. If they don't go away in the long run, they only get eliminated in that time when you waive the player. It's interesting. There's a lot of fascinating aspects about how bird rights can carry over or just not really get eliminated when a player gets waived. Like you could waive a player and like he can be out of the league for a long time, and if you're the same team that brings him back, the bird clock never resets as long as no other team signed him.
Oh, this is, if you look at some of the cap holds, I think Spot Track has them. I think you have them. There were teams, it's not as common anymore, but I remember the Celtics famously like didn't have cap space for 20 years. So the year they signed, it might have been Al Horford or it might have been somebody the year before, but they were renouncing like Dino Raja and like guys from the 90s. I learned something new here tonight. I didn't know that. So it's an interesting little rule quirk. The other thing the Bucks could theoretically do is Zion is extension eligible, right?
Zion, yes, yeah, he will be able to extend this off season, which I'll let you finish what you're going to say because I have some thoughts on that as well.
Because something else you could do is use the threat of waiving him as a way to get him to extend at like a very, very small number, thereby guaranteeing the existing contract. So like say you went to Zion and you said, hey, we want to add 2 years to your contract at 10 million a year. Now that sounds pitiful. That's not even the mid-level. But in doing that, you guarantee the two $40 million years, and you're really getting him at 4 years for $100 million. You're just front loading the contract. So that's another maneuver you could do if you traded for Zion and wanted to get some financial value without waiving him.
So the thing about that, which is why I would find it pretty highly unlikely he gets extended this offseason while he still has another year left on his contract after, is that if he signs an extension with new guaranteed money, all the money that he's owed over the next 2 years would become fully guaranteed.
Yes, that's the idea, is you're going to him and saying, you're committing to us for 4 years in total, and the benefit you're getting out of that is guaranteeing your existing contract. And the benefit that we're getting out of that is that if you're good and you're healthy, which you're obviously motivated to be, then we get you for a pittance in these last 2 years.
So, no, there's definitely that aspect. I just don't know maybe there are teams that want to do it. I would guess a lot more teams would not want to just lock in that money for Zion.
Well, do you want to know why I put that in there specifically? Because Stephon Castle has 2 years left on his rookie deal. So you're kind of balancing the money out where you get Zion making a ton in the 2 cheap Castle years, and then you have Zion making nothing when Castle goes up.
Now, the alternative is that another team could extend him, but all the new money is non-guaranteed. So that way, the first 2 years also still remain non-guaranteed.
I just don't know why he does that then.
Yeah, well, the reason he would probably do it is because it might give him a stronger. I think that would give him a stronger chance of seeing out this contract. Like, if you ask me between what is most likely between him finishing out the contract as is with no extension, him getting waived and getting a new market level contract, or him getting extended with non-guaranteed money that also puts him kind of like maybe slightly below market level. I think the way I just said it, but in reverse, where him seeing out the contract is very unlikely, and I just don't really see a team. Um, I'm already getting there's like a fourth option there. I'm getting mixed up. I just feel that the him finishing out the contract is going to be a big non-starter for teams. So if he's able to get non-guaranteed extra money, that even though it keeps the first 2 years non-guaranteed, he could look at it and say, well, I got this far with a fully non-guaranteed contract. Maybe I'm more likely to keep this remaining 60, 70 million plus whatever extra 50 million I got just by committing to being non-guaranteed. I don't know. Does that logic make sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, the basic premise here of what we're saying is there are a lot of ways if you traded for Zion that you could make the financial system or the financial situation a little bit more palatable. And I think this is pretty realistic. Like the trades you're putting forth so far are like pretty reasonable by the standards of this podcast. I can assure you my next trade is not. So remember how I said there weren't many teams that should trade for Kawhi Leonard?
Right.
I actually lied. I found a second. And I'm bringing this up because the next player I was assigned was former Kawhi Leonard teammate Paul George. So just hear me out. Kawhi Leonard and Chris Dunn to the 76ers in exchange for Paul George, Kyle Lowry, Eric Gordon, and the Clippers would regain full control over their 2029 pick. The Sixers would still have the outright unprotected 2028 pick, but currently they also have swap rights with the Clippers in 29 that are top 3 protected. Essentially, the Clippers would be buying the right to get off of their draft or get out of their draft obligation a year early by taking on another year and 50 million or so in Paul George money. They're basically spending $50 million to regain control of their 2029 pick. The Sixers, on the other hand, are getting off of that 50 million for the, I believe, 27-28 season, but they're also improving by turning Paul George into Kawhi Leonard. And in this weak East, I know a team with Kawhi and Joel Embiid is like the ultimate injury question mark, but Kawhi's been very good when he's played this year. If you started a lineup of like Maxey, Edgecombe, Oubre, Kawhi, and Embiid, and you were healthy, all you'd have to be healthy for is 6 weeks, you could make the finals. And once you make the finals, Kawhi's pretty good when he's gotten there. So I'm kind of interested in this. I think if you're the Sixers rather, it's much more important to hold on to that outright pick than those swap rights. I think the Clippers are going to have some pretty lean years, but I think by 29, if they don't have that pick, they'll mostly at least have a plan in order. And then if you're the Clippers, you only have to wait out 2 more years after this. You're so close to salvation. You could start tanking again in 2029. Or if you get your 29 pick back this offseason, you could trade 3 picks. Trade 29, 31, and 33. So it just opens a lot of doors for the Clippers from a flexibility standpoint. It's also just, I've come up with, I think, the 2 funniest trades in the history of this podcast. So I'm pretty excited about this one too. What say you?
I got first. So first of all, I'm writing. I write down the details as you say them, but I got a little lost on it. So I got Kawhi and Dunn for Paul George, and what else?
Lowry, Gordon, and the Clippers would get back the 2029 swap rights from the James
Okay,
Harden trade.
so they're just all they're doing is nullifying the 29 swap for the most part.
Basically, can I toot my own horn here for a second? Making this trade work with both teams staying below the first apron was like a tall order. Both of these teams, this is hard cap compliant. We don't need a third team.
So I don't know. I think this is actually very reasonable. So for the for the Clippers, the biggest thing is that they are losing. They're taking on an extra year. A Paul George versus Kawhi, and this just helps them. So I don't think the Sixers need to give up like all that 28 pick as well to make that happen. I think just getting the 29 first, or I think just one or the other is pretty reasonable.
And if you're
I
the
would,
Sixers, you're keeping 28.
yeah, the 28 is more valuable. So there's that. Maybe there is some other funny stuff they could do. Like, yeah, I think Chris Dunn makes a lot of sense for the Sixers, especially like after losing Melton. I think bringing in a guy like Dunn makes a lot of sense. Maybe there's some thing where the Sixers can trade some extra seconds. They, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, they have a little more seconds now after that Wizards trade they did last trade deadline. Maybe, to balance that out a little bit, there's something they could do there. But Dunn does have a pretty decent amount of value for the Sixers. I think he'd be pretty valuable there. So yeah, I don't know. I would guess, I don't know who is more likely to say no. I guess the Sixers, just for the sake of keeping that swap and the mystery of it all. I feel like that might be it. Maybe they feel like if they wait longer, maybe they could do this swap and potentially give up a little less. I think it's very reasonable. But who's a little more likely to say no? I guess the Sixers. What do you think?
So here's my pitch. If you're the Sixers and you're giving the Clippers the right to tank back in 2029, that makes them a little bit likelier to be bad in 2028, doesn't it? Because if their plan is like, if they know they're not going to have their pick until 2030, they're not going to care about being bad. That doesn't mean they'll be good, but that means that their goal is going to be, let's be as competitive as possible and we'll figure it out. If you're giving them one of their picks back, that does kind of incentivize them to set up for a 2029 tank, which helps the value of your 2028 pick. So yeah, I think the Sixers are a little bit likelier to say no, but it's the sort of thing Daryl Morey would do, right? Like Daryl Morey loves to hunt stars. He still has plenty of assets to get his real star with later. Like, who's to say in a year they don't use Kawhi's expiring plus their own picks plus the Clippers pick to trade for another big fish? I just think this is a trade they get off of that extra Paul George here, which is very, very valuable to them, and they give themselves a real chance to make the finals this year if everything goes right. So I think this is a pretty decent trade, and you seem like you agree. Like,
Yeah.
I get, what about the Clippers end of this? Do the Clippers give up their 2027 cap space? Like, is that something they're willing to do? I personally think the Clippers just aren't that desirable in 2027. This notion that they were going to recruit Giannis or Jokic was always insane to me. Like, why would those guys go there instead of the Lakers? I personally would do this if I were the Clippers. I don't know if they would.
Yeah. Now I'm starting to think after you just said all that, maybe the Clippers say no and would opt for that 2028 first instead. Because as we saw with that
That's a
Nets Rockets
non-starter for
trade,
me.
no, I understand, but now I'm thinking about it from the Clippers end. If you wouldn't it make more sense for them to like try to bottom out earlier than later? Because that's what the Nets did when they did that Rockets trade. They got their own picks back. They still owe that 2027 swap, but in theory, it makes more sense for them to get some of the earlier picks back and try to get better before some of the later obligations. So maybe the Clippers look at it and say, strategically, that swap's not really going to matter too much because we're already going to have some issues trying to get back to being competitive without any draft picks, and we'll see what cap space does for us. So I don't
Okay,
know.
let me pitch you a side who says no.
Okay.
The Clippers get back unprotected 2028 and the top three swap in 29. The Sixers get unprotected 30 and 32. Who says no?
So you're pushing it back a little bit.
Yeah, you're pushing it back, but you're getting more value if you're the Sixers because you're turning
Okay.
one pick plus one swap into two picks. And if the Sixers do say no, what about if you include the 31 swap as well?
I mean, I guess the Sixers say no because it feels like that 28 pick might be more of a sure thing at this point.
I'm with you on that. Yeah.
Yeah, because there is a lot of variability. The Clippers could get a very hot free agency one of these 2 years. There is that slight possibility, but even if they get one of the best free agents, they're still gonna have a ways to like put a really formidable team. So the only thing with the Sixers is, do you feel like instead of that being a top 7-ish pick like this 2026 pick is looking to be, Is it instead going to be a little later than that? If you think you're going to lose that upside in 2028, which is very possible, okay, then you maybe consider that. But it's just a lot of it's a lot of projection, it's a lot of speculation. In which case, yeah, maybe you do that, you're rolling the pick over, and then the Clippers might need to give back a little something extra. It's interesting. I do feel like we're on to something, and maybe in the future, these two teams could renegotiate something in the future.
Yeah. So, I
Yeah.
mean, the thought I have is that if you're the Sixers, you don't consider this now, but maybe in the 26 offseason, like if the Clippers have done something that makes themselves look a little bit better for 27 and 28, maybe then you consider. For now, I just think that Clippers pick is too valuable. I'm not messing with it. Maybe they revisit it in the future.
Yep. Well, guess let's stick to the Sixers because you got Paul George. I got the other negative contract that they have, Joel Embiid. So I first of all, I'm kind of relieved that you picked the destination for Paul George. You did. I was afraid that you might pick the Brooklyn Nets because that's where I'm sending Joel Embiid. So it started out a little more simple. I was just mainly gonna do a Joel Embiid and Michael Porter type swap, where the Sixers give up a pick. But then I started looking into it more, and I got a little more crazy with it. A lot more moving pieces. Because the Nets also have Nick Claxton on the roster, and if the Sixers are trading Joel Embiid, maybe they can get him back as well. Because they could, with Joel Embiid's 55 million, that's a lot of money. They could work something out where they are bringing back a lot of other bigger contracts. So here's the trade I came up with: the Brooklyn Nets get Joel Embiid, Kelly Oubre, Andre Drummond. So there's also a tax dump going on. The Nets do have 50 million in cap space, so they're going to help the Sixers get under the tax as well. Also taking on Eric Gordon, Kyle Lowry, and here's the main value the Nets are going to be getting back: get Jared McCain. They're going to be getting the 2028 Clippers first round pick. They're going to get that 2029 Sixers pick that has the Clippers swap and a 2031 Sixers unprotected first. Now, you guys might be thinking, wait, the Sixers can't trade those picks because they owe a 2028 pick to the Nets. So in this trade, the Nets are also sending back their 2028 pick back to the Sixers to make this happen. This allows the Sixers to trade their 29 and 31. So now what are the Sixers getting back? Along with that pick, they get Michael Porter Jr., Nick Claxton, Jalen Wilson, Tyrese Martin, and they're also going to send to the Sixers the least favorable 2029 first round pick that they have between them, Rockets, Knicks, Mavericks, Suns. They have a bunch of 2029 first round picks. So I think to balance things out a little bit, the Sixers then get they're giving back like what might be a valuable Clippers pick. Then they get a crappy pick in 2029. So I feel like when you're looking at them getting off Embiid, taking in Porter and Claxton, I feel like that's kind of 4 first round picks worth of value. So that's where this all worked out with the picks plus McCain going out. Plus they get under the tax. What do you think of this, Sam? Who says no?
I think the Sixers say no. I just think that's too much value. It boils down to this for me. I would give up my own picks to do this. I think this makes the trade. I mean, I think it makes the Sixers considerably better. I don't know if this makes them championship better, but the idea of getting off of Embiid is valuable enough to me that I would give up my own picks. I wouldn't give up the Clipper picks. They're just too much. I'd give up McCain. McCain's starting to play better, but I'm just looking at this pretty fundamentally and saying, I have my backcourt of the future. It's Maxey and Edgecombe. And Grimes is in this weird position where he's playing starter minutes, but he's not starting. I just think that team is too small, and you're going to have to move McCain anyway. So this is a pretty productive way to do it. The Clipper picks are just the deal breaker to me. I don't think you can give the Clipper picks up to free yourself up financially. I think if you're giving up the Clipper picks, it's because they're putting you in a position to like be one of the favorites in the East or like really compete for a title. I'm thinking I'm either using those picks and getting cheap cost control guys to put on VJ's timeline, or I'm trading them in the next year or two for a star on Maxi's timeline and then also keeping VJ. I just don't think getting off of Embiid is meaningful enough to give up the Clipper picks. That's
So
fundamentally where I'm at.
so hold on. Do you think then the Sixers could pull this off while keeping just a 28 pick? So they do that pick swap where they get the 28 back, their own 28 back, but then in the process they're just giving up the 29 and 31, which the 29 has that Clippers pick factoring in. Do you plus McCain? Do you think that's enough for that for the Sixers
Well,
for
the
the
other
Nets?
tricky thing about this too is that Michael Porter Jr. does have value, but I don't know how much value he has to the Sixers specifically, because just look at the team that you've constructed. I presume the starting lineup would be Maxey, Edgecombe, Oubre's gone in the trade, right? So I guess
Paul George at the
Paul
3,
George, Michael
MPJ
Porter
at the 4,
Jr.,
and
and
Claxton at the
Nick
5.
Claxton. That team is not getting enough stops to reach the finals. So really, like, you're giving up a lot of value there, and some of that value is devoted to getting Claxton and getting Porter. But I don't know how meaningful getting Claxton and getting Porter is when you're just not going to be a good enough defensive team to contend. I think at that point, I'd rather pay less not to get Porter, but that makes the numbers so complicated for Brooklyn that the idea sort of falls apart unless there's a follow up where you trade Porter somewhere. But where are you trading Porter that's getting back equivalent value and also giving you the defense that you need? I don't have an idea off the top of my head. Detroit gets thrown around a lot for Porter, but I don't think Detroit is giving you like one of their core defensive players to do that. So this gets a little bit too complicated for me. I think maybe there are easier ways to do this over the summer when the Nets have their cap space. You don't have to think about, it's not 15 million in space. You can just absorb Embiid outright, and it's like Embiid plus McCain plus a pick or two. Then maybe that becomes a little bit more feasible. During the season, I just think this is a little bit too messy.
I agree. It'll be a little easier now with Embiid. He's got 3 years left after this year. So then he'll be technically having 2 years left after. So yeah, it gets a little easier. Does feel like the Nets, and partly is because they have that extra cap space now. But it feels like they could be the Embiid team that bails out the Sixers. The other teams, like you got the Wizards, they have a bunch of cap flexibility. The Jazz just picking out some teams that could maybe be interested in doing
The
something.
Bulls
Maybe
could use him as a player, like if he were ever healthy, which he never is.
Yeah, I kind of feel like no. I think you're right. It's gonna take a lot for the Sixers to. They're gonna have to give up a good amount of stuff. So I'm sure they have a line what that would be. But also, let's see like just how he holds up. I'm anticipating that it's going to get to a point where he might not even be playing in the next few years. So in that case, the Sixers might really have to give up like some real stuff to move him. But the closer he gets to the end of the deal, the less stuff he'll need to give up. For another team taking him in also, do the Nets want to get Embiid this early? Like, even though they are pretty far away, maybe they want to get him kind of like when there's 2 years left. So I'm talking like 2027 off season, because then there might be a buyout immediately you could work out. Like think with Kemba Walker, he get back 20 million in his buyout with 2 years left on his deal. Bradley Beal just gave up 14 million. So that seems to be like kind of the cutoff for the team where they probably don't want to hold on to Embiid like very long, if at all. So I think it's going to take a little bit more time, both for the Sixers to not give up too much stuff, but also for a team to be able to quickly or get off Embiid.
Yeah, I think the problem is for me to take on Embiid at this point, I'd need the Clipper picks. If I'm the Sixers, I'm not giving up the Clipper picks. So we might just be at an impasse there. I do like the idea of Embiid one day, like having the Bill Walton run where he won Sixth Man of the Year and a title on the Celtics. Could Embiid go somewhere where he plays 15 minutes a game, but he totally owns those 15 minutes? Sort of like, TJ McConnell on the Pacers last year was a great example we talk about a lot of guys who don't play a lot of minutes, but are completely impactful in those minutes. I hope Joel Embiid gets his chance at that. I'd rather he just be Joel Embiid again, but it feels like that ship has sailed. But yeah, I just think right now there's too big of a divide between what I would need to get if I were taking on that horrible Embiid contract and what it would take, like what I'd be willing to give up of our Philly. So I think they're going to keep him for now, but that's something that they're probably going to revisit every transaction cycle starting in the 26 offseason. My last trade, we're kind of going out with a whimper. Not really. It's just not as exciting as my first two. Kawhi Leonard isn't in this one. Dejounte Murray was the last player that I had on my docket. Dejounte Murray, like the number isn't as big as a lot of the guys that we've talked about, but A, he was terrible for the Pelicans last year. B, he tore his Achilles in the middle of the year and hasn't played yet. C, the Pelicans drafted his replacement in Jeremiah Fears, who's going to be the starting point guard in New Orleans. Like, he's been very good as a rookie, or at least like he's promising. So Dejounte Murray doesn't have a starting job to come back to. D, the Pelicans are just perpetually cheap. And E, and yes, like we've gotten all the way to E. Dejounte kind of bashed the organization last offseason. So just when you combine all of that, I think Dejounte Murray is one of the least desirable contracts in the NBA. He's at $30 million this year, and he's going to round $30 million the next 2 years after that. I have a trade that I kind of like, and I mostly want to use this as a launching pad to talk philosophically about the Miami Heat. Because when we talk about Heat trades, all we ever talk about are the Heat getting a star. Like, man, could they fix Ja Morant? Could they fix LaMelo Ball? Wouldn't it be cool if they got Giannis and Bam were together? The Heat are running the Noah LaRoche offense this season pretty successfully, and that is the no-star offense. The stats kind of bear that out, right? Nobody on the team is playing more than, I think, 32 minutes a game. They want to be deep, and they want to be versatile. So here's my pitch. If I'm the Heat, I go to the Pelicans and say, hey, I'm willing to take on Dejounte Murray, but I want Herb Jones for my trouble. So the trade I've built is Terry Rozier, Simone Fontecchio, Nikola Jovic, Kasparis Yakachonis, who was their first-round pick last year, and we'll say a top 4 protected 2030 first-round pick, and the Heat take on Murray's contract to get Herb Jones. The idea for Miami now is that you've built this incredibly deep roster with only one max contract. You're kind of zagging against the teams that have multiple stars, and you're saying in the Apron era, we want to be a team that goes 9-10 deep. You have all of this redundancy. You have Hero and Norm Powell as your scoring guards. You can kind of play them in shifts. Don't play them together. You have Herb Jones and Andrew Wiggins. You always have one of those guys on the floor. You always have a really good wing defender. You have Bam and Khalil Ware. Always have a good big on the floor. That's the idea. You're going to be really deep. You're not going to go star hunting, and you're not going to pay some massive price to go get insert angry star X. Yossi, who says no?
You said a top 4 protected is a 2031 first round pick?
2030. The Heat 0 and 27.
Oh, you're right.
So it could be 2029, actually. I might have gotten my years off, but the first available top 4 protected pick from the Heat.
Yeah, because they owe, you're right, they do owe 2020. No, I think they
owe
2027. Yeah, so
yeah,
29.
So 29.
Yeah. Okay. 29. Is it crazy to think? I feel like the Heat can get this deal done without trading a first.
I had that same thought. And ultimately, I think Herb Jones is so valuable to so many teams and so gettable at that low cap number that the Pelicans will have offers of like the Laker offer we've talked about several times, which is 1 pick and like 2 swaps. I think that's enough that they could probably cajole a first round pick out of the Heat. It would have to be protected, but I think they probably could. It might not have to be top 4 protected, though. Like, I did think about that. You're not crazy for thinking that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think there is something there. I will say this about Dejounte Murray's, like, the torn ACL it's Achilles, right?
Achilles.
He tore his Achilles. Okay. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that's, in my opinion, probably worse than the ACL. So getting this at around, is he 30 years old already? Or I think he's like pushing 30.
Somewhere around there. I'll look it up.
Yeah. My b-ball ref is not showing his age. That's weird. Yeah, I'm guessing he is around
29,
30. Yeah. I'm very scared about what kind of player he'll be when he comes back. at the same time, I also don't think it's like close to the type of contracts we're talking about right now. And I kind of still have like a little bit of optimism that this could be not a positive value contract, but like neutralish. Uh, and there is that report, I think Jake Fisher reported today about how the Heat are looking into like quote unquote disgruntled stars like Giannis. I'm not so much Giannis, but like John Morant, see if that change of scenery with them can help him get better again. Um, with Dejounte, it's more so coming back from a tough injury, but same kind of principles apply. I feel like that could be a really good situation still, because like the Pelicans are just not a good situation to go
The
to the
Heat are
Heat.
the best
Yeah.
situation.
Because when you talk about some of the things that he said about the Pelicans last year, not great.
All warranted, but not great.
Yeah, not great that your own player's saying that. Yeah, it's warranted for sure. So I kind of like the idea of, and we've spoken about this before when John Morant, when that whole incident happened in the Grizzlies bench, that the Heat are probably the team we feel most strongly about trading for Ja, and probably least apprehensive about what that would happen there. So I feel like the same with Dejounte Murray, and I would imagine that they'd want John Morant first if there's a price that could be met. But if they can get in a guy like Herb Jones as well, and the value is really tight, maybe, because I could see them looking at this and thinking, okay, Jovic and Kasparis Jakučionis, plus you're getting Rozier, who's a big expiring. You're getting off the Dejounte Murray money. They might try to really push that this is enough for them to get Herb Jones back as well. Maybe they just throw in a bunch of seconds. But if I had to guess between John Morant and this, I think they would probably pick this.
I like this better than John Morant. I like this better than LaMelo. Also, just worth pointing out, Drew Smith tore his Achilles late December last year, and he's been playing this year. Like, maybe the Heat know something. Like, maybe they have an inside track on like the best way to rehab this injury, or maybe the injury just isn't as scary as it was a few years ago. We're obviously going to have more data on that in the next year or two as Tatum comes back, as Halliburton comes back. But Kevin Durant obviously was fine after he tore his Achilles. So maybe the injury isn't as scary. And then you look at what the Heat backcourt would be. You'd have Hero, Norm Powell, Dejounte Murray, and Davion Mitchell, plus Drew Smith as the fifth guy. Like, that's a really good, really deep, and really versatile group of guards. I think Dejounte would work in this no screens offense. He loves to isolate. So if your whole idea is we're just trying to create the best mismatch possible to isolate with, that would work pretty well. And like, the issues you'd probably run into is how much does it cost to re-sign Norm Powell? Can you extend Tyler Hero at a reasonable number? But if you can do that, like, I think that's the best way to handle this Noah LaRoche offense, where you're going to play very fast. You want to limit people's minutes, so you have to be very deep. You want to have as many different attackers as possible. You don't want to be totally consolidated into one star or two stars. Can't be heliocentric. And plus, what do we see in the playoffs every year? Tyler Hero gets played off the court defensively. Darius Garland like mocked him to the media in the first round last year, and Tyler Hero took offense to that, and then he could do nothing to prevent it on the court. So if you're getting Herb Jones, you could run out some really, really impressive defensive lineups to protect Hero, where like, yeah, are you going to be able to kill Hero if the four other players on the court are Davion Mitchell, Herb Jones, Andrew Wiggins, and Bam Adebayo, or Khalil Ware, something like that? Like, that's a lot better for Hero than, the current situation. I like this a lot for both sides. I would, if I were the Pelicans, I'm going to get so many offers for Herb Jones that I want to see. Does somebody old give up a good unprotected first round pick 6-7 years down the line? Does somebody give up multiple picks? I'm open minded, but I think this makes some sense for both teams. If you're the Pelicans, you're just wiping the slate clean and you're saying, we are clearing up money. We're getting a couple of young prospects. I think both of these guys make some sense for them, especially Jovic. You want to have bigger shooters around Derek Queen. So I don't think this is that crazy. I think it's a pretty good trade.
I think with Dejounte Murray, he's just been so forgotten. No one talks about him at all. And there still hasn't been any update on when he'll come back, but if let's say he does come back like next month and he's looking okay, I doubt there will be a trade market for him, like a robust trade market. But I wonder if there will be some teams trying to see if they could get him for like just taking him on. Because I think the Pelicans ideally want to just move off him, and they could really just focus on the guards that they already have. And I think about a team like Minnesota, for example, who
I
really
looked
needs
at
some
them too.
backcourt help. I was thinking if they really need to make a trade, and I find it unlikely that they even do address point guard by trading one of their top five highest paid players, maybe something like Nas Reed and Conley. Like that alone works on the Wolves' perspective. I would imagine the Pelicans take that in a heartbeat. The Wolves, it's more like if you can see that Dejounte Murray is going, like if he comes back and he's looking okay, and you feel like he's gonna get, he's gonna be serviceable. Okay, maybe that makes sense. And if you could find another big man later who can stretch the floor like Nas Reed, that's easier said than done. Just something like as far as the Wolves, they still need to address point guard. Now I will say this back to the Heat trade. So you traded Rozier mainly plus a couple minor like mid-level-ish contracts. Really, it's mostly you traded Rozier's contract for Dejounte Murray and you brought back Herb Jones. I haven't done the cap stuff, but I just started thinking as you were talking about this Heat construction, they could still trade for Giannis on top of this. They could do then Wiggins and Hero. Plus, if they didn't give up any picks, those picks, and then I'm guessing they got to trade Khalil Ware at least. If you could just then you have Murray, uh, Norm, Herb, Giannis, Bam, plus hopefully keep Hawkins in the process off the bench. Uh, it's unlikely this all happens. They even pull off one of these trades, but just saying, like you still left enough powder in the keg to make that happen as well.
Yeah, I mean, if they still have their picks, if they still have where, like they can still go make the star trade. But my whole conception here is I don't know that the Heat need to make their star trade. Like, if anything, I think the way they're playing opens them up to being the team that's just like, let's have 8 or 9 starting level guys and see where that takes us. And let's get those guys without giving up all of our picks so that if in a few years this doesn't work out, well, now our obligation to Charlotte has expired and we have our full draft to trade. Now we can really go for it again. I don't think the Heat need to make like a mega trade in the next year or two. I kind of want to see where this goes.
Yeah. Well, that's all of our trades, Sam. And yeah, I mean, anything before we sign off here?
Read CBS Sports. I've got plenty of stuff coming out. I think if you're listening to this on Tuesday, my quarter season awards should be publishing today. My quarter season All Star All NBA will be Wednesday. We have I've some trade stuff coming up. Obviously, December 15th is a holiday for this podcast. I have some stuff that I'm writing. We're gonna pod about it. So I don't want to give that stuff away, but be on the lookout. We've got stuff coming.
Yeah, December 15th, a week as of this recording. It's still Monday, a week away. So everyone who's listening, please thank you for supporting us these past 6-ish months or so since me and Sam really started podcasting together. Please subscribe to Third Apron wherever you get your podcast and subscribe to the Substack. I wrote about the Clippers last week, the Rockets. I got into if they should make a Fred VanVleet trade, and if there is a trade out there, what could that look like? And I'll be writing about the Bucks. A lot of with the Giannis soft launch trade request, just a lot of more so like the actual trade details, which me and Sam have very thoroughly gotten into. We did a 2-parter on that. What the return could be, stuff like that. That's generally what the topic has been throughout the NBA media landscape. But I'm now going to talk about like the Bucks, their situation, because they're in a very tough spot right now, and I'm really going to get into like how they got here, what kind of return they can get, what's next. Just really try to get into like this the encapsulation of everything that got him to this point. So be on the lookout for that on the Substack. And me and Sam hopefully will be back this week for some more basketball talk. So goodbye, everyone. See you then.